start with the first question for you, Dr. Saleem, and this is in regards to Surah Al-Baqarah. So,
Mhm.
ayah 270 Surah Al-Baqarah says, وَمَا أَنفَقْتُم مِّن نَفْقَةٍ أَوْ نَذَرْتُم مِّن نَذَرٍ.
Mhm.
So the questioner here is asking, what does the nadar refer to?
It is referring to any vow that you make. So this was one of the worship practices in ancient Arabia, in which people would make a vow. They would say that, well, if such and such a wish or desire is fulfilled, then I will in return do such and such a practice. So this was something in vogue in pre-Islamic Arabia, and but we know that later on it became very, very diminished in the Islamic practices. But the thing is that if ever you make a vow that you'll do something, if something is achieved, the underlying emphasis in the verse that you have just recited is that you must fulfill those vows. So basically, whether, as it says, وَمَا أَنفَقْتُم مِّن نَفَقَةٍ أَوْ نَذْرٍ, so whatever you spend and whatever vow you make, you must fulfill it. So basically, the stress here is on the fulfillment of vows. To be, just as to fulfill your promise is an important thing, so fulfilling the vows is also equally important.
Thank you, Dr. Saleem. They're asking for authentic material on the concept of nazar niyaz.
I mean, there is, this is a very common word. I mean, this would be like asking that what does a promise mean? What does an oath mean? So you see, you don't have to search for a lot of material, because this is a very common practice in which you would make a certain declaration that if such and such a desire or objective that you have in mind is fulfilled, and you pray to God, and then it is fulfilled. So whatever you have vowed in return, you are then obliged to do that. So it's just a simple concept. I mean, you don't need to do any research.
Okay, thank you very much, Dr. Saleem. Our next question comes from Abrar. Abrar, please go ahead.
السلام علیکم سر.
وعلیکم السلام.
سر آپ جمہوریت کی بات کرتے ہیں اور یہ فرماتے ہیں کہ ریاست کا کوئی مذہب نہیں ہونا چاہیے تھا. تو میرا سوال اسی کے متعلق تھا کہ ایک ایسی ریاست میں جس کی کوئی آئیڈیالوجی نہیں ہو، تو اس ریاست میں آخر قانون سازی کس بنیاد پر کی جائے گی، اور کن مورل گراؤنڈز پہ جو ہے وہاں کے لاز بنائے جائیں گے، اور کیسے ہم لوگوں کو آخر یہ اختیار دے سکتے ہیں کہ وہ ہماری ملک کی قانون سازی کریں، جبکہ قرآن پاک کے اندر یہ واضح بیان ہوا ہے کہ اکثریت جو ہے وہ جہنم کے لیے پیدا کی گئی ہے اور اکثر لوگ جہنم میں جائیں گے. اور ہم یہ بھی دیکھتے ہیں کہ عرصہ دراز سے لوگوں کی موریلٹی گرتی ہوئی چلی آ رہی ہے، تو ہم آخر لوگوں کو مکمل اختیار کیسے دے سکتے ہیں؟
تو پہلی بات تو یہ کہ جو آیات آپ نے کوٹ کی ہے، ذرا اس کو نکال کے دیکھیے. اس کا یہ مطلب نہیں ہے. وہاں تو یہ سیاق و سباق ہے کہ قریش جو ہیں اور مشرکین جو ہیں وہ شرک کے مذہب کو اختیار کیے ہوئے ہیں، اور وہاں یہ کہا جا رہا ہے کہ اگر اکثریت جو ہے وہ جو شرک کے مذہب کی جنہوں نے اختیار کیا ہوا ہے، اشارہ ان کی طرف ہے. تو یہ جو لوگ ہیں، اگر تم ان کی پیروی کرو گے، ان تطیع اکثر من الفی الارض، تو یہ جو اس وقت سرزمین عرب میں جو لوگ ہیں جو شرک کے لمبردار ہیں، اگر تم ان کے مذہب کی پیروی کرو گے تو پھر اس کا نتیجہ یہ نکلے گا. اس لیے وہاں پہ تو شرک زیر بحث ہے. تو یہ ضروری ہوتا ہے کہ دیکھیے قرآن مجید میں سے جب آپ کوئی مطلب اخذ کریں تو اس کو تفصیل سے پڑھ لیں. اس آیت کو آپ نکال کے دیکھیں گے تو اس کا کوئی رائے دینے سے تعلق ہی نہیں ہے. اس کا تعلق اس زمانے کے شرک کے مذہب سے ہے. دوسری بات یہ کہ جو جمہوریت کا جو لفظ ہے، یہ تو خیر ایک جدید لفظ ہے. قرآن مجید نے تو یہ لفظ استعمال نہیں کیا. قرآن نے امرہم شورا بینہم کا لفظ استعمال کیا کہ ان کا جو نظام ہے وہ ان کے مشورے پر مبنی ہوتا ہے. تو ہم تو دیکھیں قرآن مجید ہی کی بات کو مانیں گے، اور قرآن مجید نے اس کا جب ہمیں تفصیل سے ہی بتایا کہ آپ کو اکثریت کی، یعنی ظاہر ہے کہ جب آپ کہتے ہیں کہ ان کی رائے ان کے مشورے پر مبنی ہے، تو اگر مشورے میں اختلاف ہو جائے گا تو یہ تو کامن سینس کی بات ہے کہ پھر اکثریت فیصلہ کن ہو جائے گی. تو یہ دراصل قرآن مجید کی بتائی ہوئی گائیڈنس ہے. جمہوریت تو اس کے بہت بعد میں پیدا ہوئی ہے. اور تیسری بات یہ ہے کہ جب ہم کہتے ہیں کہ ریاست کا کوئی مذہب نہیں ہے، تو یہ ایک بڑی عام سی بات ہے کہ ریاست تو ایک غیر مرئی چیز ہے، ایک نان لیونگ تھنگ ہے. میں کہوں کہ میز کا کیا مذہب ہے، میں کہوں کرسی کا کیا مذہب ہے، تو ایسی چیزوں کا تو مذہب نہیں ہوتا نا. ریاست کے جو علمبردار ہیں ان کا مذہب ہوتا ہے. تو جب یہ کہا جاتا ہے کہ ریاست کوئی مذہب نہیں ہوتا، تو اس کا یہ مطلب نہیں ہوتا کہ ریاست کو جو چلانے والے ہیں ان کا مذہب نہیں ہوتا. اس کا مطلب صرف یہ ہوتا ہے کہ یہ ایک بالکل ایبسرڈ اور بیکار بات ہے کہ ہم کہیں کہ ریاست کا مذہب ہوتا ہے، کیونکہ ریاست کوئی اینٹی، ایک زندہ اینٹی نہیں ہے. तो वहाँ मुराद सिर्फ ये होता है कि रियासत को चलाने वालों का मज़हब होता है। तो ये 3 बातें हैं जो मैं आपके इस सवाल के जवाब में कह सकता हूँ।
Our next question comes from Rafia Khwaja. Please go ahead.
Assalamualaikum, Dr. Shehzad. Dr. Shehzad,
Right.
मेरा ये question है कि आजकल I've been studying the Quran in detail and I've been listening to different scholars' interpretation of the verses. तो इसमें
Right.
मुझे ये हो रहा है कि एक certain Quran की आयत है वो मैंने पढ़ी और फिर मैंने देखा कि let me see what the other scholars, what does he say about this ayat? And then I said, okay, what is the opinion of the third? So I'm getting confused because sometimes they are not agreeing with each other on the same ayat or the translation of the same interpretation of the same verse. So it gets confused. So should I, in the end, just accept the scholar who convinces me the most? Because it's the same Quran, the same ayat, the same Arabic.
Yes, that is correct. I mean, at the end of the day, when you study the Quran and you study various mufassirun, who are of course various scholars, then the way to go about is that you study the reasoning of a particular verse. And then, of course, if there is this difference of opinion, then the way to go about it is to accept the view of the person, of the commentator, of the exegete, who convinces you the most.
Baran Nashur, you're up next. Please go ahead.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Walaikum assalam.
Sir, my question is, I recently started doing a little side hustle for myself where I do drop shipping and I get orders and I order from China and then I deliver to the people, straight to the people. But my question was, if this money I earn from this practice is halal or not, because I'm not sure.
So, what exactly do you think is not prohibited? If you explain a little more, I mean, is it that you import something?
Yeah, so I've heard from people that drop shipping is not allowed because you do not own those stuff yourself. You just order it from somebody else and let it delivered to somebody's address. And I was also wondering because there's of course malpractice in those factories in China, maybe like child labor or the how do you say that the exploitation
Yeah.
of
So Baran, let me tell you this, that as far as any malpractice is concerned, this is, I mean, something of a sin that the people who hire children, for example, if it's child labor, then they'll be responsible. It's not your responsibility. Secondly, if it is just a question of delivering a certain asset or a certain thing that you have ordered to a particular address and you're just taking your own commission, so this is, I think, a fairly legal and fairly lawful thing. So unless the people who tell you that it is forbidden, I think you should ask them that what exactly do they mean and what exactly is forbidden. Because you see, just to give a blanket statement that something is forbidden, they must tell you what exactly they think is forbidden. Because what you have described to me, if I have understood it correctly, which means that you order something and you like a middleman maybe, and you're ordering something, some product, and you're asking that original agency to deliver it to a certain address. So you're just acting like a middleman. Is that so?
Yes, exactly.
So that is perfectly okay. That's perfectly okay. I mean, this is how middlemen work. This is how commission works.
Okay, thank you very much.
Habiba Zafar, please go ahead.
अस्सलाम वालेकुम सर, मेरा सवाल ये है कि मुहर्रम आने वाला है और इसमें कुछ एल्डर्स हैं, वो ये कहते हैं कि इसमें कुछ सेलिब्रेट नहीं करना चाहिए बिकॉज़ हमें दुःख जैसी फीलिंग अपने ऊपर तारी रखनी चाहिए और वी शुड नॉट गेट ड्रेस्ड अप, वी शुड नॉट यूज़ एनीथिंग न्यू। इसकी क्या ये जज़्बा सही है? और असल में अगर ये जज़्बा सही नहीं है तो हमारी क्या फीलिंग्स होनी चाहिए मुहर्रम में और जो उसके इवेंट्स हुए थे उसके बारे में?
I think we have to understand that the incident of Karbala that took place, it was a very tragic incident. It was something that shouldn't have happened if things were planned carefully and conducted carefully. But it's a big tragedy, and we also know that people who died in such a tragic way, hopefully, inshallah, they'll get the status of martyrs. So I don't see that anything that relates to grief should be continued and prolonged so long. as that it starts affecting our daily lives. For example, people, they don't keep weddings in those dates. They don't wear clothes, new clothes, as you have said. So I think this is a sentiment that is with us. I mean, we do feel that grief, that the sacrifices that they make, but I think that should also make us proud, because what they did was for the cause of truth. So it is not just a question of mourning, it's also a question of celebrating their courage and their spirit. So I see no harm, and there is nothing prohibited at all. And at best, what you can say is that if you are living in an area in which you have people of Shiite, friends among Shiites, maybe you can show some respect to them, because they have a special inclination and leaning towards this incident. Other than that, I don't think there's anything to be done. As I said, it's something, in fact, to commemorate, to celebrate, because it was people who had died for the cause of truth. There were people who did not stand up to tyranny. So I think this is a tremendous thing. So it should also be celebrated.
Thank you, sir.
Javed, if you're back, please go ahead.
Yes, yeah, Assalamualaikum. गांधी साहब ने जी 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 हज के ऊपर जैसे बात की है, जैसे हज एक बहुत बड़ा फरीजा है, उसके फिर अगर आप हज करने नहीं जा सकते तो फिर आप फर्दर कुर्बानी तक आ जाते हैं आप। तो हमारा क्वेश्चन ये है कि हज जिंदगी में एक मर्तबा फर्ज होता है, तो क्या कुर्बानी भी इस तरह सिर्फ एक मर्तबा फर्ज होगी?
So, as far as the sacrifice, animal sacrifice, if you're talking about the sacrifice on Eid, on the Eid al-Azha is concerned, it is not an obligation at all, even once. So it's like a highly recommended thing. It's something that is very desirable, but it has not been made mandatory even on Eid. However, as I said, the philosophy behind it is it's so moving, it's something so convincing that if you understand the philosophy, maybe you will have this inspiration to do it every year. But as I said, it's not an obligation, it's not mandatory at all. So the philosophy behind animal sacrifice, which I've explained several times here before as well, is that when you are offering that animal for sacrifice, it's not the meat that is in contention. So people often get confused, and they often think that what is the use of sacrificing so many goats and camels and sheep, etc. Because today we find people who are in need, they might need something else. So instead of distributing meat, why shouldn't we do something else? So the purpose of animal sacrifice is that when you sacrifice an animal, you make a commitment to God that, oh God Almighty, if you ever require my life for the cause of truth, I will not hesitate. And today I am presenting this animal in my own place as a token of that sacrifice, if that is required. If you require my own sacrifice, that I sacrifice my own life. So this is like a rehearsal that we do every year, that we remind ourselves by slaughtering an animal that today we are slaughtering this animal, and tomorrow if we ourselves are needed for the cause of truth or for any just reason, we will not hesitate. So the meat is just a byproduct, and you can consume the meat yourself, you can distribute it to your friends, you can distribute it to the poor. That's just besides the point. I mean, that's just a naturally arisen thing, because you have slaughtered a goat, so obviously you're not going to waste the meat. So the reason that I've explained this philosophy is that people often think that animal sacrifice is basically meant to distribute meat. This is not the case, as I said. It's basically your own vow and your own commitment that you are making. And above all, as I just said, that it has not been made mandatory on Eid. It's a highly recommended thing, but still not mandatory.
Okay, thank you so much. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Dr. Saleem, Riaz, please go ahead.
Starting Doc, how do you reconcile the hadith which says that a Muslim, when he or she passes away, after the burial, the angels come and ask the questions about their faith and so on, and then based upon the answers, their azab starts out. That's one. The second question is, we say that the ruh, or the soul, goes into barzakh, yet we ask for Allah for to make the grave spacious and also having.
Correct.
So, yeah, I got your question. So as far as the torment in the grave is concerned, as far as punishment in the grave is concerned. So I've discussed this a number of times here as well. Just to briefly recap, basically this question and answer and this reward or punishment, so to speak, takes place for a specific category of people who are the addressees of prophets of God, messengers of God, and who live in their times. And they are the ones on whom the truth, or to whom the truth has been revealed in its ultimate form, and their account is settled in this world. Their account is settled in this world, and therefore when they die, they are just asked that question in order to remind them that their account has already been settled, their fate has been settled, and now that they have intentionally denied a messenger of God in the times of whom they lived, so they now deserve punishment. If you go through the questions, you'll see that those questions are also specifically related to people who are alive in the times of God's messengers, because the questions are that do you know this person who was with you? Why did you not say yes or accept his invitation when you were convinced about it? So these questions cannot be asked from any other people except the ones who are alive. So this is particularly for that category of people. As far as people who are concerned who lived in post-prophetic times, like people like us, so we are put to sleep in barzakh. They too will be in barzakh, but the fact is that they'll be experiencing reward or punishment. But the second category of people is that category in which, or we can say people who are living in the post-prophetic era, and they are just put to sleep right after their death in the land of barzakh. And once they wake up on the day of judgment, then their account will be settled, and then they will be either sent to hell or heaven. So this is the answer to your first part, that when we are talking about this grave punishment, we are talking about a specific category. It's not for all people or all inhabitants of the earth, just those who lived in the times of messengers of God, and their account was settled in this very world, and that is why they are punished, because if their account has already been settled, and because the rest of the people, their account is yet to be settled, so therefore they are not even asked these questions. As far as the word qabr or grave is concerned in these hadith narratives, it's just a signification of barzakh, because you see, we don't see the land of barzakh. The last thing that we know of that person whom we consigned was that we just consigned him or her to the grave, and that was the last place in which we remained in physical contact. So this is basically a symbolic expression. So when you use the word grave, we are not referring to the grave per se or grave per se itself, but to wherever that person is. And also we know from certain hadith narratives that it does seem that this barzakh area, wherever it is, we're not very sure about it, but it lies close to the graves. Because we know from the Quran that on the day of judgment, when people will be called out, they will rise from their graves and they will call out as if they are in consternation. So it also seems that wherever they are being put to sleep, it is maybe close to their grave. So that is why the word grave has been used. Otherwise, for all intents and purposes, it is actually barzakh.
And when we ask Allah to make the grave spacious and light, is that also just referring to symbolics?
Yes, of course. And also remember that this prayer is not just for us, because it was for people who had actually denied the truth, and for them we know that their account would be settled once they pass away. So it's a prayer for people who lived in those times when they consigned their dead to the grave. They would pray that God make it easier for them. So when we say that, please God make their grave spacious, it's basically the prayer of a person who was living in those times, and the deceased was related to him or her, and that prayer was being actually supplicated before the Almighty for that person.
Thank you very much, Dr. Saleem. Ammar Rasul, you're up next. Please go ahead.
Thank you. Assalamu alaikum, Dr. Saab. Dr. Saab, my question is that when the Quran discusses how God saved Hazrat Isa from crucifixion, one of the reasons that it gives is, how could we let something so horrendous happen to somebody who was so beloved to God and so important to God? हम अपने इतने महबूब आदमी के साथ ऐसा कैसे होने देते थे? And obviously this is me paraphrasing. At another point, Quran says that we do not differentiate between our prophets. All of them are important to us and all of them, because they're messengers. But then the Quran also says that prophets were murdered by Bani Israel, Hazrat Zakaria and other prophets. So how doesn't this seem like a contradiction that one prophet was saved from a gruesome death because he was very close to God, and then other prophets were murdered by Bani Israel?
So you see, as far as this phenomena of killing the prophets is concerned, this could have taken place for all sorts of messengers and prophets. It's not that certain prophets were closer to God. It is only that during the time that they are still delivering the truth, they are still in the process of completing their assignment, the Almighty does not allow any harm to fall upon them. That is what the Quran has said. And Wallahu ya'asimuka minan nas, that He'll protect you from this, from the evil of people. And it means that as long as the preaching endeavor or the preaching mission of prophets of God is not completed, I mean, it's still to go to its completion, in that era, no one is able to harm them. But once that is completed, then of course, as we know from the Quran in Surah Baqarah says, فَرِيقًا كَذَّبْتُمْ وَفَرِيقًا تَقْتُلُونَ, that you ended up denying certain prophets and you ended up killing certain prophets. So as far as denying and killing is concerned, as I said, it relates specifically to the period in which, if any harm is to come to the prophets during the time of their preaching, once their preaching endeavor has finished, that we call as Itmamul Hujjah, or which means that the truth has been delivered. After that, there is no such protection which the Almighty has guaranteed. And of course, according to His own wisdom, according to His own scheme and plan, He lets these things happen even to the closest of His prophets. I mean, all prophets are close to Him. It's not that just one prophet. It is just that His scheme does not allow them to be killed during the time of their preaching. So Jesus was, I mean, one prophet of God who was still continuing with his preaching when he was, when the Jews and the Romans, they conspired to kill him. So that is why the prophet, he was saved and he was not allowed to be killed. And the Almighty took him away himself. So there is, the wisdom is some place else. It's not as you've described, that there are some prophets who are close to God and others are not. The bottom line is that during the time of their preaching, no harm can come to them.
Dr. Saab, if I can just very quickly ask that it seems that, as Ghamidi Saab sees it, Hazrat Isa's Itmam Hujjah was already complete, and that's why the generation that denied him were actually punished, within their lifetimes. And this is what Hazrat Isa had said as well, that you guys will see the repercussions of your denial. So from that point of view, his Itmam Hujjah actually was complete. And so then, according to your answer, he should not have been saved.
I mean, this is something that is what I said, that if their time of Itmamul Hujjah has completed, I mean, if they had wanted to kill him, once that had happened, they would have been allowed to do so. But since, he had just completed his mission, the next step that was important was that Jesus was not just an ordinary prophet of God, so to speak. He was the last of the Jewish prophets. He was the last of the prophets of God sent to Abraham's progeny. For 2,000 years, what happened was that for 2,000 years, prophets kept on coming, and for them, the progeny of Abraham, there was another law also, and that is that as long as they stuck to God's promise and were dispensing justice in their nation, then they will be kept aloft from the other nations of the world. This is the famous promise which is described in the Torah and in the Quran with Abraham's progeny. So because of the fact that Jesus also occupied that status, that if they were to kill him in any way, then this was something that would be against the promise that was being made. And so therefore he was not allowed, the Jews were not allowed to crucify him. And the other thing that is also important here is that their killing was to be accompanied with his, because the Almighty knew in His own knowledge that they might mutilate his body, they might even disfigure it. So the Almighty did not allow them to even touch his body. So it's a question of understanding the very specific nature of Jesus himself. Other than that, that is absolutely correct, that he was able to accomplish that his responsibility of Itmam al-Hujjah. But remember, that is just one part of his ministry. The other part being that he was also the last of the Jewish prophets. He was the last of the prophets in Abraham's progeny. And for them, there was a certain law, and that law had to be implemented as well. So this is the second reason that I would state here.
Thank you very much, Dr. Saleem. Anwar, you're up next. Please go ahead.
Assalamu alaikum. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes, indeed.
अस्सलाम वालेकुम डॉक्टर साहब, मेरे पास दो क्वेश्चंस हैं। पहले ये तो मैं इस क्वेश्चन से शुरू करूंगा कि क्यों वजह क्या है कि इस्लाम में consensual sex हराम है? What's the logic behind it?
So that to protect the institution of the family. You see, institution of the family means that husband and wife should come together. It's in a not only through consent, but in the form of a legal marriage contract, in which a lot of rights and obligations should be settled. The children who would be born to this family, they need a husband, they need a father and a mother. They need the affection of the father, they need the affection of a mother. So both of them is required. So because to Islam, the institution of the family is of primary importance, anything which sabotages or endangers this institution is proscribed in Islam.
So अगर हमारे पास अगर आपके जवाब से मैं ये समझाऊं, अगर हमारे पास मॉडर्न दौर में जो तरीके हैं कि हम बिना निकाह के भी यानी बच्चे की बाप या माँ बाप से बन सकते हैं, तो अगर सही समझा तो आपके दलील के मुताबिक ये मेरा ओपिनियन ये भी आता है कि इस दौर में जो हम कर सकते हैं कि साइंटिफिकली और मेडिकली जो बिना निकाह के भी बच्चे का यानी एहतमाम कर सकते हैं कि इसकी प्रोजेनी को डीएनए टेस्टिंग के जरिए पैदा कर सकते हैं, तो ये हम नहीं कह सकते कि निकाह अब इस दौर में जरूरी है ही नहीं। बॉयफ्रेंड गर्लफ्रेंड की रिलेशन भी अब क्योंकि ओके हो जाता है इस्लाम में, क्योंकि हम एक बच्चे का स्टेटस हम मेडिकली प्रूव कर सकते हैं।
नहीं, ऐसी तो कोई चीज़ नहीं है। मेडिकली अगर आप प्रूव कर भी लें तो that does not necessitate that, in any case that you should do away with the institution of nikah. Nikah has to be conducted in any case. That is the requirement. That is what brings the husband and wife together in the form of a marriage contract. That is not correct. That is not correct. That is not correct. No, I'm not saying that. I'm saying that as far as nikah is concerned or marriage is concerned, it is not just to produce children. Of course, it's also at times, of course, children is the natural product of marriage. But man and woman, they need each other. They need a companion. And that companionship is only fulfilled if they come together in the form of a marital contract. And the urge that they have for one another, of course, is something that continues with that, and that is the result or the driving force of producing children.
डॉक्टर साहब, मैं फिर से यही कहूँगा कि अगर बच्चा पैदा करना ही अगर इस्लाम में निकाह को यानी इंस्टीट्यूशनलाइज किया गया है, तो इस्लाम में फिर बांझ औरतों से निकाह करना या जो मर्द और औरत निकाह करने के बाद बच्चा नहीं चाहते उनको भी तो हराम कर देना चाहिए था ना?
No, the reason that a woman may be barren, of course, this is part of God's scheme. At times, this normally doesn't happen, but in certain cases it does happen. And the reason for this happening is because this world has been created on the form of a trial and test. So at times the Almighty does not allow the children to be born to a couple. That's part of that trial.
If they willingly, they don't want any children.
If they don't want any children, it's, how many, this is a...
Their nikah should be void, and it's also considered be in zina.
As I said,
my dear, as I said, that it's not just the children for which the nikah is conducted. That is one big thing. But companionship of the two is also something that is very important. And if they don't want children, this is a very rare happening. Maybe in a 100 sample, you'll just find maybe 99 people still wanting children and just 1% not wanting children. So for 1% of the people, we just cannot say this in any way.
Girlfriend and boyfriend, and they are not married, but still they are loyal to each other. So this still can raises the question about the importance of nikah or being in a
You see, my dear, what you have to understand is that the law is generally is not made on exceptions. The law is made on a general tradition or a general path that is adopted. In the general sense, whenever you get married, you have children. It's very, very rare that you don't. And the second important thing that you have to realize is that it's not just the children for which marriage is conducted. That is one big thing. The other important thing, as you know, is the fact that you also need a companion. You also need someone with whom you can spend your life. So that is also an essential reason.
And with that, we'll start off with the first chat question. This one's asking, is using the sadqa, sajda, or turban, piece of clay, while offering prayers permissible?
Is using the turban?
Turban or sajdaga, piece of clay. Oh, sorry, turba.
Turba. This turba means the piece of mud or clay. I mean, this is the practice of certain people that they do, but it's not any essential part of the prayer itself. It's not something that has been made mandatory.
Okay, thank you very much, Dr. Saleem. The next question asks, why did God's wrath not encounter the direct addressees of the Jesus in the usual way, as is the case with other prophets?
It did. It certainly did. So Titus, just about in 10 or 15 years, even before that, Jesus had passed away. He ravaged the Romans, we know. He came, he was a Roman himself. He came and he ravaged the Jews. And he struck down the temple for the second time. And that is how the Quran has fulfilled its prophecy that if you deny your messenger directly, then of course you'll be punished as a nation. And they were. So remember, Jesus has this special status. He has a double status. He's a twofold status, you can say. One of them is that he was a messenger of God, and anyone who denies the messenger of God, they are liable to be punished. So therefore, they were punished through the hands of Titus, the Roman emperor. And when Jesus passed away, we know that he himself made this prediction in the Gospel of John that before this generation passes, if before it passes, they'll see God descend, they'll see that I am going to come. And when Jesus said that I'm going to come, it actually meant that God's punishment is going to come. So that punishment did come, and Titus destroyed them. And that is how the second temple got destroyed also. So, and the second status which is held by Jesus is that he was also the last of the Jewish prophets. He was the last prophet among the progeny of Abraham, about which it had been ordained that if they deny, the last prophet of God in this way, then for the rest of their life they would be held subservient to those who are going to follow him. So when I'm talking to the last prophet, I'm referring to the last prophet amongst the Israelites.
Thank you, Dr. Saleem. The next question asks, and if you could please answer this in Urdu, what is meant by wasteful spending? If a person spends cheerfully on his food, drinks, and clothes, will this also be wasteful?
आपने उर्दू में जवाब मांगा है, तो देखिए इस उर्दू में इसको हम कहते हैं इसराफ़। इसराफ़ का मतलब है कि आप अगर खाना पीने के में जो आपकी ज़रूरत है, आप उसको अच्छी तरीके से इस्तेमाल कीजिए। पैसे को आपने अच्छा पहनना है, आप अच्छा खाइए। लेकिन एक ये होता है कि आपका दिल गवाही दे देता है कि भाई ये ज़रूरत से ज़्यादा है, यानी इतना ज़्यादा है कि इसके नतीजे में शो ऑफ हो रही है, इसके नतीजे में आप असल में सिर्फ अपनी अना की तस्कीन कर रहे हैं। तो ये इसको इसराफ़ कहते हैं, इसको हम ओवर स्पेंडिंग कहते हैं। तो इसका ये मतलब नहीं है कि आपके पास अल्लाह ताला ने अगर आपको पैसे दिए हैं या आपको खुदावंद ताला ने अगर दौलत दी है कि आप उसको स्पेंड ना करें, आप इसको इस्तेमाल कीजिए। आप जो भी आप कर सकते हैं अपनी खुशी के लिए कीजिए, लेकिन उसके अंदर वो जो एक्सेसिवनेस है उसको हमें बचाना चाहिए।
Thank you very much, Dr. Saleem. The next question asks, is jinn possession a real thing?
This is something that you should not ask any religious expert, because this is not the topic of religion. This is the topic of maybe parapsychology. Whether a human being can possess another human being, whether some other life form can possess some other life form, this is not this is not a subject that relates to religion. It relates more to parapsychologists or maybe people who are who have esoteric knowledge, and so we have no means to tell this. What we do hear are experiences that people narrate, and I have seen many instances that have been narrated by people, and they seem to be quite true. But then, of course, this is, as I said, a parapsychological phenomena. It should not be related to religion in any way.
Thank you, Dr. Saleem. The next question asks, why khatam has been used in complimenting highness of people as well in riwayats instead of khatam?
Khatam, what exactly is the word that is being said? Khatam?
Khatam versus khatim.
Okay, khatam and khatim. Okay, that is. So the word khatam has been used in the Quran, khatam an-nabiyyin. So the reason the word khatam has been used is because it should not be confused with the khatim. Khatim can, of course, mean someone that is the end of something which is the final. But because the word final and end could also have been used for the best, when we say that he is the last of the generation, at times we are not referring to the very last, at times we are referring to the very best of the breed. So because this confusion could have arisen, so the word khatim was not used by the Quran, and it was used, the word used was khatam, and khatam actually means a seal, and that is why the word seal, when it is used, it cannot cause any confusion. So a seal is a stamp, it finishes off something, or it is also used in the meaning to, it can also testify to something. So if you have to believe in another prophet, it has to be through God's testimony, through the testimony of the final prophet. That could be one meaning, and the other meaning of Khatam an-Nabiyyin would be that he is the seal of the prophets, meaning that he is the last prophet. So as I said, the word Khatim, had it been used, which means the last prophet, then people could have reinterpreted it, and that is what many people have done, in fact, in recent times, that they think that the word last is also used for the best. So in order to avoid this confusion that could have arisen, and that has already arisen, as I just said, the Almighty never used this word. He used the word khatam.
So the questioner is saying that in riwayat, khatam is used as meaning of khatim, and khatam is always for Hadrat Ali.
Unless if the questioner is on air, he could explain what he exactly is implying. I would be in a better position to answer. Otherwise, as I just said, the word khatam has been used with a specific stress. And if you like to know more about it, then you have to also understand that in the earlier scriptures or in the earlier books that were written, we never had these i'rab or these declensions, and people could just read khatim or khatam at leisure.
Actually, my question was that in some riwayats, khatam is as well used in complimenting the highness of a person. Like in a riwayat, it is said that Hazrat Ali Rizallahu anhu is the khatam al-awliya. We know that khatam is used in such a meaning, but here khatam is as well used. So what about these riwayats?
How do you know that Khatim al-Awliya? How do you know that he's used in the meaning of Khatim al-Awliya? Because the initial books, they never had i'rab. It is you who read the book and then you give the i'rab. So remember, the Quran was not transferred like this. It was transferred with declensions. We know in the Quran the word Khatam has been used. However, if you think that for Hazrat Ali radhiyallahu anhu the word Khatim has been used, like Khatim al-Awliya, that...
No, sir, not khatim. Khatam is used there.
You have to first check. Have you checked the authenticity of these narratives? If you've just read them,
sir, even though if they are fabricated, but used.
That's not correct, my dear. When these narratives are fabricated, then the rest can be fabricated as well. How can we trust such narratives that have been fabricated, that they are to be used in the right sense? None of these narratives, to the best of my knowledge, are authentic.
Yes, sir, that is true. And then as well, there is as well a sort of poetry stanza in which Khatam Mashora is used. Khatam Mashora, not Khatim Mashora.
How do you know it's Khatim Mashora? My dear, that is not... if the word Khatim Mashora is used, Yes, that is okay. I mean, that is fine, because the word khatim can be used for the best as well. But in the Arabic language, in the case of Surah Ahzab, the word khatim has not been used. The word khatam has been used, which does not refer to the best.
Sir, I agree to that, but I am saying that in that very poetry stanza, khatam mashura is used, not khatim mashura.
So,
Bifatata.
how do you know that?
Sir, I have checked. I have, read some of the books of of the deviant sectors as well. I have read of that the Dr. Irfan Shehzad who have written the book on the Ahmadi movement, etc. So in that very thing, that very book.
I mean, if you can clarify that, what exactly are you implying? I mean, what exactly is your question?
Sir, I will repeat. Sir, my question is that we know that Khatim means seal, isn't it? And Khatim is the ism file. We know that. And Khatim can be used that, that person is of very high caliber, etc. But the thing is that Khatim, if we see in the Arabic usage, standard Arabic, even though it is not used there, but in some of the riwayatas, we get to know that in Khatim al-Awliya, like there.
My dear, I have just answered this question. I have just answered that question, that all such narratives are fabrications. And you cannot base any such conclusion on fabricated narratives.
Yes, sir. If they are even fabricated, but I give you another alternative, poetry stanza in which the khatam mashura is used instead of khatim mashura, which had to be used here. But here it is used khatam mashura. So if we see that,
it doesn't matter. I mean, the word if the word khatam ashura has been used, it doesn't matter, because it only tells us that he's the seal of the shura, or the final shair.
Thank you very much.
So, but khatam mashura. So how can one say that any poet is the last of the poet? No one can say. Every person, if
I mean, you see, what I'm saying is that please understand the language of the Quran. Whether you use khatim or khatam, that is this, it has a very important connotation. The word khatam can never mean the best. That is just what we are arguing. The word khatam can never mean the best, just as the word khatim can. So the Quran never used the word khatim because it could have meant the best. It used a definite word, which is khatam, and it can only mean the seal. That's all. And if there is any other usage, of this narrative, I mean, of any such, then those narratives have to be established. In the absence of any such established tradition, we cannot trust them.
Thank you very much, Dr. Saleem. Sheikh, I'm sorry, you've had your turn. We have other questions in the queue. The next question asks, if a soul is to be born, and it's written where? How come marriage is not written when they have kids, and why does divorce occur? Is it Allah's decision or free will?
Of course, it's free will. I mean, none of the things that we do, that we intend, that we decide, we cannot in any way make God responsible for them. When we decide to divorce, it's our decision. When we decide to marry, it's our decision. So we know that very well. So the only thing is that God knows what our decision is going to be. God knows what our decision is going to be. That doesn't mean that He's driving our decision. So if divorce is happening, they're happening because of naturally arisen circumstances. We wish that they would not happen, but then at times this is the only solution. But then, as I said, this solution is something which is driven by the freedom of will of a person. They're not under any compulsion to do so from God. I mean, if the question is that if marriages are made in heaven or the pairs are made in heaven, then why do human beings divorce each other? The question is that this sentence is a biblical sentence. It only means that pairs are decided in heaven. It's just an expression of the fact that we choose our spouses, but God already knows who we are going to choose. So this expression of God's knowledge has been stated as if pairs are made in heaven or marriage is decided in heaven. This decision is not that God has taken the decision. It is just a fact that God knows what we will decide. So the decision has to come from us in both cases.
Thank you very much, Dr. Saleem. Sulaiman Ahmed, you're up next. Please go ahead.
Assalamu alaikum.
وعلیکم السلام.
ڈاکٹر صاحب میرا سوال ماسٹربیشن کے حوالے سے ہے اور میں اس پر آپ سے پہلے 2 بار سوال کر چکا ہوں. میں اس کو تھوڑا سا ریپیٹ کروں گا. آیت میں نے پیش کی تھی کہ وَإِن تُبْدُوا مَا فِي أَنفُسِكُمْ أَوْ تُخْفُوهُ يُحَاسِبْكُم بِهِ اللَّهُ, اور جو کچھ تمہارے دلوں میں ہے اس کو خواہ تم ظاہر کرو یا چھپاؤ, اللہ تم سے اس کا حساب لے گا. اس سے مراد فالہ نے یہ لی تھی کہ آپ کو جو نیگیٹو تھاٹس آتی ہیں اس پر اللہ تعالیٰ حساب لے گا آپ سے. اور ڈیورنگ ماسٹربیشن جب نیگیٹو تھاٹس آتی ہیں تو
ایسی
اس
تو
کے
کوئی
لیے میں
بات
نے آپ
نہیں
سے
ہے.
سوال کیا تھا.
اس وَإِن تُبْدُوا مَا فِي أَنفُسِكُمْ کا کوئی تعلق نگیٹو تھاٹ سے نہیں ہے. دیکھیں 2 طرح کی تھاٹس ہوتی ہیں. ایک ہی ہوتی ہیں کہ تھاٹس تو ہر ایک کو آتی ہیں, صحابہ کو بھی آتی تھیں, اور صحابہ نے یہ کہا کہ جب نبی صلی اللہ علیہ وسلم سے کہ ہم آپ کے سامنے اگر وہ جو خیالات ہمیں آتے ہیں ہم بیان نہیں کر سکتے, تو آپ نے کہا یہ تو ایمان کی نشانی ہے. تو خیالات کا آنا کوئی غلط چیز نہیں ہے. خیالات کا آنے کے بعد آپ کو ان کو انٹرٹین کرنا اور ان پر پھر جیسے کہتے ہیں نا کہ اپنے آپ کو گزارنا, وہ چیز ہے. تو یا وہاں ان تبدو میں سے اس کا کوئی تعلق نہیں ہے. وہ چیز ہے جس کو قرآن مجید نے ایک اور جگہ بیان کیا ہے کہ آپ جو چیز ظاہر اور اسم کا جو ظاہر اور باطن ہے اس دونوں سے گریز کریں.
جی نہیں ڈاکٹر صاحب, وہ بات ہوئی تھی کہ جو ڈیورنگ ماسٹربیشن ایک انسان نے ایک امیجنیشن بنائی ہوتی ہے, اس پر آپ نے کہا تھا کہ اگر تو کسی ایسے آدمی کے بارے میں آپ نے امیجن کیا ہوا کہ جو اس ٹائم ریئل ورلڈ میں ہے تو وہ تو ایک گناہ میں آئے گا, مگر جو آپ نے جسٹ ایک امیجنیشن کی ہوئی ہے تو وہ ایک باڈی بس آپ نے ذہن میں رکھی ہے تو اس پہ وہ حرام نہیں ہے. تو اس پہ یہ سوال ہوا تھا کہ وہی امیجنیشن اگر وداؤٹ ماسٹربیشن آدمی آپ نے ذہن میں رکھے تو وہ بھی تو وہ گناہ میں آتی ہے, تو ڈیورنگ ماسٹربیشن وہ گناہ میں کیوں نہیں آتی؟
نہیں وہ کیا چیز ہے؟ نہیں اگر وہ آپ جب نہیں کر رہے ہوتے اور آپ کے خیال میں آتی ہے تو وہ کیا چیز ہے جو وہ ذہن میں آپ کیا کر رہے ہوتے ہیں اس وقت؟ کسی خاتون کو امیجن کر رہے ہوتے ہیں جو امیجنری خاتون ہے. ایسے ہی ہے نا کہ کوئی فرضی خاتون کو آپ امیجن کر رہے ہوتے ہیں جب آپ اس عمل سے نہیں گزر رہے ہوتے, تو اس میں کوئی کیا غلط بات ہے؟
وہ کہتے ہیں کہ یہ حرام میں آتی ہے.
نہیں کون کہتا ہے؟ سوال یہ ہے کہ دیکھیں آپ نے اگر سوال مجھ سے پوچھنا ہے تو میں تو آپ کو جواب دے رہا ہوں, اگر آپ نے کسی اور سے پوچھنا ہے تو ان سے ان کی دلیل پوچھیے.
جی مطلب وہ حرام میں نہیں آتی؟
بالکل بھی نہیں.
اچھا, اور ڈاکٹر صاحب یہ کہتے ہیں کہ ان رمضان ان روزے کی کنڈیشن میں ماسٹربیشن حلال ہے یا حرام ہے؟
نہیں, ہر وہ چیز دیکھیں جس کے نتیجے میں آپ کا روزہ خراب ہو, دیکھیں روزہ تو اس سے ٹوٹ جائے گا, یہ تو روزہ توڑنے کی چیز ہے, تو آپ کیسے اس کو جائز قرار دے سکتے ہیں؟
وہ یہ کہتے ہیں کہ اگر روزے میں وہ چیز حلال نہیں ہے تو عام حالت میں وہ کیسے حلال ہے؟
روزے میں تو کھانا بھی حلال نہیں ہے, تو عام حالات میں کھانا ہم کھا لیتے ہیں. یہ تو کوئی استدلال نہیں ہے نا.
Thank you very much, Dr. Saleem. Muhammad Jamil, you're up next. Please go ahead.
میرا سوال جو ہے وہ آج کل جو بہت ایک ایشو چل رہا ہے سوشل میڈیا پہ طاغوت کے حوالے سے ہے, تو اس کے بارے میں جیسے یہ 3 ٹرمنالوجیز خاص طور پر ہے, جبت ہے, طاغوت ہے اور تحکیم آئی تھنک. تو کچھ جو ہے وہ لوگ کہتے ہیں کہ انٹرپریٹر جو کہتے ہیں کہ یہ صرف اور صرف نبی پاک صلی اللہ علیہ وسلم کے دور کے لیے تھی, اور وہ جو طاغوت کے پاس جاتے تھے ان سے فیصلے کروانے کی حد تک تھی. چونکہ اب وہ یہ نہیں ہے تو اس دور میں نہیں ہے, اس کی اپلیکیشن نہیں ہے. تو اس پوائنٹ آف ویو سے ذرا تھوڑا کلیئر کر دیں کہ ایک تو یہ ٹرمنالوجیز کیا ہے, ان میں کوئی فرق بھی ہے, انٹرچینجیبلی یوز ہو سکتی ہیں, یا اس دور میں اگر اپلیکیشن ہے طاغوت کی تو اس دور کا طاغوت کیا ہوگا پھر؟ اس دور میں طاغوت تھا تو وہ کیا تھا پھر؟
دیکھیں ذہن میں رکھیے کہ طاغوت کا جو لفظ ہے وہ عربی زبان کا لفظ ہے, وہ اردو میں بھی آ گیا ہے. عربی زبان کے اندر جب یہ قرآن مجید میں استعمال ہوا ہے تو یہ سرکشی کے مفہوم میں ہے, اور یہ جب الف لام کے ساتھ آتا ہے الطاغوت تو وہاں شیطان مراد ہوتا ہے, اگر آپ قرآن مجید میں سے آپ کو سباق دیکھیں گے. لیکن بعض اور جگہوں پہ یہ اس جگہ پہ بھی آیا ہے, اس سے تحکم علی طاغوت کی بات آئی ہے کہ آپ جو ہیں وہ اپنے قضیوں کو, اپنے کیسز کو سیٹل کرنے کے لیے طاغوت کی عدالتوں میں جاتے تھے, یا وہاں مراد تھی یہود کی عدالتوں میں جاتے تھے. تو اس کا استعمال یعنی سیاق و سباق کے لحاظ سے مختلف ہے. آج اگر میں اردو زبان میں ہی کہتا ہوں طاغوت تو یہ اس کا مطلب ہے کہ سرکشی, اس کا مطلب ہے کسی ایسی آپ شخصیت کی طرف اس کو نسبت دے رہے ہیں کہ جو سرکش ہے, جو یعنی ظاہر ہے کہ کسی بھی لحاظ سے خدا کا اوبیڈینٹ نہیں ہے, یا خدا کا یعنی خدا کے احکام کو ماننے والا نہیں ہے. اور اس لیے ہم اردو میں کہہ دیتے ہیں طاغوتی جو ہیں قوتیں, طاغوتی قوتیں مراد ہیں, شیطانی قوتیں. تو یہ تو ایک عام سیاق و سباق ہے. تو یہ اس لیے اس وجہ سے ایسا نہیں کہنا چاہیے کہ یہ لفظ جو ہے یہ خاص نبی صلی اللہ علیہ وسلم کے زمانے میں ہے, یہ اردو زبان میں آ چکا ہوا ہے. تو اردو زبان میں جب طاغوت کا لفظ استعمال ہوگا تو اردو کے استعمالات کے لحاظ سے ہوگا. तो अगर आप किसी ख़ास जगह पे इस्तेमाल हो गया है तो मुकल्लिम जो मुतकल्लिम है उसको देखना चाहिए कि उन्होंने किस सियाक में इसको इस्तेमाल किया है। तो ये एक आम लफ्ज़ है, जैसे मैं सरकशी का लफ्ज़ बोलता हूँ उर्दू ज़बान में, तो ये कोई ऐसा तो लफ्ज़ नहीं है मैं कहूँगा ये ख़ास दौर का है। तो तागूत का लफ्ज़ अब उर्दू ज़बान का एक लफ्ज़ है और उससे मुराद सरकशी है। सिंपल सादा सी बात ये है।
जी, इसका मतलब ये है कि जो ये कहते हैं कि एक जैसे एक है कि अल्लाह का निज़ाम है या अल्लाह का दीन कवानीन है खुदा के, एक है तगूती निज़ाम है। और वो तगूती निज़ाम जब हम बात कर रहे होते हैं तो वो फिर हम उसके कॉन्टेक्स्ट में कुरान की आयत पेश कर रहे होते हैं।
वहाँ
कि
हम ये कह
देखें
रहे होते हैं कि
कुरान
कुरान से जो ऑपोजिट है, एक है अल्लाह का निज़ाम और एक है शैतान का निज़ाम। वहाँ हम अल्लाह के मुकाबले में बयान कर रहे होते हैं कि खुदा ने एक निज़ाम आपको दिया हुआ है, वो खुदाई निज़ाम है। एक है तागूती निज़ाम या तागूती कुव्वतों का दिया हुआ निज़ाम, इसका मतलब ये है कि जो शैतान ने दिया हुआ है। तो ये तो एक सादा इस्तेमाल है और मैं मुख्तलिफ़ अल्फाज इस्तेमाल, मैंने मुख्तलिफ़ जुमलों में मैं ये लफ्ज़ इस्तेमाल करूँगा, इसके मुख्तलिफ़ मतलब होंगे। तो इसमें देखना चाहिए कि अगर आप किसी ख़ास जगह पे ये लफ्ज़ इस्तेमाल हुआ है तो मुतकल्लिम या जो बोलने वाला है वो क्या कहना चाह रहा था।
Sir, my question is about those seven ahruf of Quran or different Quran of Quran, and I read an article about James Samuel. You must know about him, and then I looked into it. I found a Quran version of Quran, and I went to the whole Surah Baqarah. About 10, 12 places there was changes, and changes were only the darts were changed, or the harkat was changed. But they say it was very beautiful recitation. I heard also a Qari from Morocco or somewhere. He was also studying the worst Quran. So my question is, they think their Quran is the best, is the final one, the correct one, and we think that we read a Hafzi Azam version, and this is the correct version. So how do we resolve this issue? Because here it has become a big issue among people, because people from all over the world over here. I used to go to mosque. They would read there, then I stopped going there. So it's really disturbing. So everybody's, that's it.
Right. So I think I've discussed this issue in a lot of detail, and this detail you can see in a lot of my lectures, because my specific area of study has been the history of the Quran. So I've done my doctorate on this subject, I've done my postdoctoral research on this subject, and I've written in detail. And I can just say in a nutshell that people who are reading different other versions of the Quran that we are not used to, they are just about 2% of the rest of the world amongst the Muslim Ummah, and the reason that they are doing so is because of certain misconceptions and some misunderstandings that have arisen because of Hadith literature. Other than that, if we believe that the Quran is a book that has been transferred to us through the perpetual concurrence, which means tawatur, then the only reading that has been transferred to us through perpetual concurrence is the one that is in vogue today in the rest of the world, in the whole of the world, and which about 98% people are reading. We just find 2% reading different versions of the Quran, and as I said, if you go through my book or my lectures, you'll understand that they have arisen from misunderstanding certain ahadith of the Prophet.
I have your book, but I have not had a chance to read it, completely. But this is a big.
You can just read the last chapter. I mean, it might be the last chapter is called Transmission of the Quran. So if it's not possible for you to read the rest of the book, you can read the last chapter, because it might answer your question.
I will do that. Thank you, sir. Jazakallah khair.
Thank you, Dr. Saleem. Abrar, please go ahead.
सर, मेरा छोटा सा क्वेश्चन था कि कुछ रवायात के अंदर हमें ये देखने को मिलता है कि क़यामत के दिन नबी इस्लाम के उम्मतियों के आज़ाए वुज़ू चमक रहे होंगे। तो मेरा इस हवाले से आपसे ये सवाल था कि क्या ये नबी इस्लाम के उम्मतियों की कोई ख़ुसूसियत या फिर कोई एजाज़ की बात है, या फिर सिर्फ एक निशानी के तौर पे बताया जा रहा है कि नबी इस्लाम के उम्मतियों के हाथ चमक रहे होंगे? और उन लोगों में क्या वो लोग भी शामिल होंगे जो जिनके अकीदे गुमराह हैं? क्या उनके भी आज़ाए वुज़ू
यहाँ तो
चमकेंगे?
असल में आज़ा के चमकने की जो खुशखबरी है, ये बाज़ रवायतों में आई है कि जो लोग वज़ू करते हैं और अच्छी तरह वज़ू करते हैं, उनके वो वज़ू के आज़ा हैं जो चमक रहे होंगे। तो ये तो असल में इस चीज़ की तरगीब है कि आपको वज़ू के मामले में سہل انگار نہیں ہونا چاہیے، جلد بازی میں وضو نہیں کرنا چاہیے. ہوتا ہے نا کہ بعض دفعہ آپ کی کوئی حصہ رہ جاتا ہے تو آپ جلدی میں کرتے ہیں. اہتمام کے ساتھ وضو کرنا، تو اس کے بارے میں کہا گیا کہ جو لوگ اہتمام کے ساتھ وضو کرتے ہیں ان کے عذاب قیامت کے دن چمک رہے ہوں گے. تو یہ نبی صلی اللہ علیہ وسلم کی ایک ترغیب ہے اپنے امتیوں کو کہ آپ اہتمام کے ساتھ وضو کریں اور جلدی نہ کریں.